Welcome everyone. Those of you attending right now live and those of you who will be watching our video later. This is Kris Glabinski. I'm from StorTrack, based in Barcelona, responsible for the European business and product development of our company. And I have here with me my dear guest, Jody Burks. Jody is based in Miami, and she's very well experienced in self-storage and StorTrack as well. And she's given me a lot of insights on how this business should work. So I'm really new to self-storage, but Jody is my mentor. So hello, Jody.
I don't know about mentor, but thank you, Kris.
No, yes, you are. I learn a lot. And I think today I will learn a lot as well, because today we're going to talk about the budgets. And as you told me, it's the last minute for budgets. A lot of owners, a lot of managers are thinking now about how to do next year. I think this year is the most challenging year to create budgets for the next one because of the situation. So I think it's going to be an interesting presentation.
That is true.
So let's hit it off. Well, first of all, to introduce StorTrack, it's a leader in business intelligence for self-storage industry. We're present in US, UK, some European countries, and Australia. And what we do is we give data insights on products, prices, availability, competitive marketing, basically anything that can save your time doing that manually, so that you're able to action every time and whenever it is needed to be actioned, so that you can be faster to the market. And obviously, especially now, it is important to be on top of the things and be as fast as possible in reactions to whatever is happening or to however the situation is changing. So StorTrack is giving you the ability to know what you should know in your business. Today, we're going to talk about how to gear up for your 2021 budget. Gear up means how to spice up your budget. So obviously, traditionally, we know the routine. We know how to look at the things. We know what to pay attention to when we're planning the budget. We'll give you a couple of extra hints. Obviously, they will come from StorTrack and from a revenue management perspective on how to tweak the 2021 budget to make it even more educative as it usually is. We've got some tips from Scott McLaughlin. Am I pronouncing it right, Jody?
McLaughlin, yeah.
McLaughlin. Okay, can you introduce Jody, Mr. Scott McLaughlin?
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Scott, if you're watching or later. And we'll also be doing a US webinar. But Scott is the Executive Vice President for Century Self-Storage here in the US. He is a client of ours at StorTrack and an optimized user, where we're getting the data and presenting a lot of the data for you, and the facts that we have here. So he has provided us with a few tips of his insight. Like Kris said, the budget process, but here from the standpoint of some revenue management, pricing, data, environment, he'll give us some tips that will.
Okay, so let's do it this way. I'm going to be a student, not being a fresher in the industry, and we'll show you a couple of things that Scott is suggesting to take into consideration when planning your budget, and let us see if me as a fresher can understand what that really means, that if it can be done. So this is what Scott is suggesting as the typical budget process. We review the previous year or the current year monthly activities. We look at conversion reports, and then we strategically set goals for the next year. We estimate, we're using our property management systems to estimate unit demands by month. We slice and dice our current statistics, our current performance, in order to plan what we are expecting to be in the future. Obviously, we look at all the operational side, and we estimate our expenses. We're looking at resources that we're going to need, any outsourcing companies, any consultancy companies, staff, and we're planning all the costs, focusing obviously on cost reduction, which will be part of optimizing the business in general. But what Scott is also suggesting is to take some extra gears into the budget process, in the budget thinking, to make sure that we very thoroughly review the competition and that we can set rate and revenue management goals and take them into an insight for the budget planning. So here are three steps, three pointers from Scott that he's advising us to go for. These 3 points he's basing on his usage of self-storage. So we're going to have an opportunity from Jody to explain those in more detail and follow us through Scott's kind of direction of thinking. And then me, a fresher, I will try to see if I understand what does that really mean to the business. So Scott is suggesting identify the supply and competition. I think that's a pretty clear suggestion. We need to understand the environment that we're in, the whole ecosystem. We need to understand the competition, the products, what's the supply, and also what is the demand as a consequence of that supply. And if we can see how that will change in the next year, that's obviously where the benefits can come from. We review the price trends, and it's very important, especially you will see probably some slides which will show some price changes within the different periods of time. So reviewing the price trends per product, per your market, and ideally per a larger market like your country or a state, is going to be quite influential on how you will start thinking about planning the prices for the future, and also analyze price volatility to understand where the dynamics of the market are, where they're not, when we can start the dynamics of the market, or where can we still be in the a comfortable way of approaching the business without too much touching the prices. So all that is what Scott is suggesting. And let us take us through these three major steps to see what could be the real benefit. So, Jody, I will ask you for help. We've got identify, supply, and competition. Can you go us through? This is like a couple of screenshots that we can use in order to visualize the importance of Scott's suggestion. And then let me see if I can figure out something out of that.
Sure. Well, identifying your supply and competition, obviously starting with the competition here, we're looking at all of the little Google pinpoints of how many self-storage facilities are in a geographic area or a radius here. So as you can see, storage is very popular. And then we can drill down further into your market, which is where you would want to look at your immediate competition. And again, it depends on your climate, or if you're in a rural area, how far you might want to go out for that competition. So like I said, this is just a quick view here of locating the competitors first in your market, so you know how much competition is out there, and then looking for how much supply is out there, which would help you in your budgets of knowing your market and knowing your rates and how you want to set your budgets or set your goals based on the market.
Okay, so obviously what I can see here that we're looking at London. We look at a whole lot of different stores in London. It seems crowded to me at the first glance. But then when I look at these figures here, it kind of makes me wonder, because London is a population of 8.9 million people. And for that population, we have a rentable square foot of 3.4 million, which is giving a ratio of 0.38 square foot per capita. Is that normal, or is that seems like pretty low.
I don't know as much about the UK market, but yeah, that seems low also. But you have much more, I mean, we're much more concentrated in the US, so geographically.
Okay. Well, I took a look at the UK's average square foot per capita, and it's 1.04. But before our conversation, I also checked the US statistic, and it's 6.6 square foot per capita. So although the market seems crowded, I think there is still large potential on that market, considering the population.
Absolutely.
Okay, so over here at the bottom, I have put a little note of myself just to see if it makes sense what I understand. So the market is huge in London. I think it's the biggest and the most crowded market of self-storage in UK. But still, looking at a simple statistic of square foot per capita, I can see that there's still a large potential on the market to grow. Obviously, it will depend on the behavior of different people, demographics, etc. But the room is still there. I've got another screenshot here, Jody.
Mm-hmm. So again, just continuing with identifying the competition, knowing who the competitors physically are in your market by the store name or competition address, knowing how far or close they are to you, knowing things like their features and benefits, so that you can either compare yourself or show yourself to be better based on a feature or benefit. So here we are able to identify several different competitors in the market, along with the pricing availability on particular unit sizes or square footage. Like Kris said earlier, get that information for you quicker and easier for you to have at your fingertips to study your competition.
Okay, so is that what Scott is looking at when he's thinking about identifying supply or competition?
Right. So first of all, you have to identify who your competitors are in your market, how many,
Sure.
and then, like you said, the supply. What inventory do they carry? Are they comparing or carrying like sizes like yourself, or is there a possibility here to show you that there is no availability on a certain type and you have that unit, so you can capture the market there.
Okay, very interesting. What's the pirate eye, or is that a pirate eye, or
for Halloween? Yeah. In this case, for StorTrack, the way we display the data here, we're able to see that there was pricing available for this particular unit on a website, and now we're not showing that size or that price. So we're assuming that that unit type could be full, which again gives you opportunity to look at your rates to see if you want to do any dynamic pricing or increase your rates, knowing that this inventory is off the market.
Okay, so let me try to take a look at that. When I look at this, that means that from 160 square foot unit, there seems to be no supply.
Correct. In this particular market, yeah.
So in this particular market where I'm in, nobody's using 160 square foot. It could be that the market the market does not need that. But when I look at the larger one, 200 square foot, I can see that there's one that has it available and one used to have it available. So it's no longer for sale, right?
Correct.
So it seems like there is a demand for larger stores, maybe not so big as the ones on the left, the smaller ones, but there is only one player here on my market, selected market, who has 200 square foot store available. And actually, I can see they don't have 160 available, but they do have 200. So that could mean that strategically, when planning the budgets, we can actually plan some price increases for that unit, because their availability of that is quite limited.
Right. You're the only one carrying that particular size in that market, which I'm assuming this particular graph is a 3-mile radius. So that's important to know that you've got that. You're the only one in that 3-mile radius that's offering that unit type.
All
So you
right.
definitely would want to consider what are
Cool.
your options for the pricing.
So that means it's a very important message for me to plan the budget around that area. So I'm going to know that there's a small supply for large units. Also, when I look at some competitors, I can see that they do have, horizontally a lot of excess, and there's only two ticks, which means they only sell these two products. So can I assume that some players are really small in my competitive set?
Yeah, and another thing that our particular report here does show you the square footage of this self-storage facility. So you may be a larger facility that has, the one below it has 60,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And this is a small operator. So they specialize in small units. That could be a plus, for them. And their pricing, and that's all they carry. But again, it could be an advantage for the next self-storage that is larger and carries all different unit types and different sizes, so that they have the supply in the unit that the customer is looking for.
All right. So my note is correct, and my note is kind of leading into some marketing conclusions, which are also part of the budget and strategic setting up for next year. Is how do you define your uniqueness? What are your strength points, and what are your target customers? Obviously, being in the marketing for small and low price units may be completely different to the larger ones, which cost more, and probably the behavior of the target customer is a bit different than of the small ones. So that's a great slide that Scott is using. So here's another one. What does that say?
So this one is based more on tracking the inventory that's available in your market. So the bar graph in this case represents if the inventory is on the market, and the red is if it's off the market. So looking at, like you said, the 35, 40, 50 square feet, most of the inventory is available online right now. If it's off market, that means we're not representing a price. So we're assuming again that unit type is full.
Okay, so that's a clear visualization for me. Everywhere I see green, that means it's available, and if it's big green, then there's a lot of available. And if obviously there's a lot of things available, the competition increases versus the orange ones, which are off the market. So clearly, you can see on the right-hand side of the picture, it's a lot of orange comparing to green, or not even being available green, versus to the left-hand side. There may be a lot of potential for the smaller units, but also there is a lot of availability of the smaller units. So I'm going to note that small supply for large units, but it's very utilized as well, which can suggest it's kind of an undersupply of the larger units on that market. This could help me try to evaluate if I should maybe change some product offering for my next year and include that in the budget.
Yeah, some of that's hard if your facility is already built. You already have these standard sizes, but it could be projection for growth. Maybe you do have room to expand more square footage on your property, build some more units, and this kind of insights would help you exactly with what you said, to look at where is the market undersupplied, and how could I capture that?
Okay, great. This is another slide that Scott is looking at.
Yep, and this one again is more on looking at inventory and comparing what units are available on the market and which ones are not, what are being advertised online, and again, how many are on the market and how off the market. So helping you understand, again, like you said, your supply and availability in your market.
Okay, so I think I have a full picture now, having to look at these slides, going into the details of that supply and availability and products. I can see it's very crowded in the left, less crowded in the right. And it's up to me strategically now to consider whether I should focus on fighting the rat race on the left or trying to go blue ocean on the right. I probably would go for both, but I would have my strategy divided, and the investments in budgets and investments in analysis and the investments in communications, I would probably differentiate that. Obviously, if you said that, if it's like you say, there's no potential to change my capacity, maybe there's a chance of connecting rooms, connecting the units, or maybe even selling 2 units for the square footage of larger ones, and then still addressing that to the target audience, which would consider the larger ones.
And some of this would go back to, even though we're presenting most of the StorTrack view, that's where we have the data from, but your property management system, whether it's SiteLink, Yardi, there's several different ones out there. You should be using that information also to see, again, where the demand is. Are you getting calls for 200 square feet and you don't have them available? So what you suggested in converting units or virtual square footage, if you want to call it, giving them 2 100 square foot units and for the price of a 200 square foot would be a great option.
Right, that's a great insight, actually, Jody. And I know it from my industry is that most of the analysis and most of the budgeting actually comes from the property management system, based on what we already see coming in our business. This is how we identify segmentations and the behavior of each segment, so that we can adapt our product proposition and pricing to them. But we need to also take into consideration is that by looking at property management systems, we only see what we can see, and what we see is the customer that's already in. We need to also see what is the potential of customers on the market, because if these customers are not calling us and they're going to a competitor, we don't even know that they are there. We only know what comes to us through our door. So I absolutely agree. Looking at property management system, and also on that will give you a great perspective on the inside of your target market. Now, this one I've seen before, and I actually like this one a lot. Why don't you go us through this slide, Jody?
I guess part of identifying your competition is knowing some of their marketing strategies or knowing about the market. So in this slide, we're able to compare some of the marketing strategies based off the website. We use a scorecard ranking of 100 points. And you can see here, it's based on certain things about your website, the search, maybe the paid search, your social media. And it gives you some insights, again, in how you stack up against the competition. Doesn't mean that you have to do it exactly like them, but if you see there's a way that they're able to rank higher, and the ultimate goal here is to get someone from your website and to generate a phone call and generate a storage room. So knowing your market is very important.
Okay, so I really like that picture, because it's very rarely you can see the comparison of the businesses based on marketing, based on how they present online. And I know that the self-storage, specifically in UK, is a lot of online oriented. So they actually advertise a lot. They actually pay attention to promote online. And I think this is a great insight. Probably my first reaction would be, have you ever seen a score of 100? Do you have a customer that would be 100 in here?
Personally, no, I have not. So I think you're at the bottom of your slide. It showed the highest rank in this market was 42. Again, in the actual platform that we have, there are more drop downs so that you can see what those rankings mean, and where you might be able to improve on them. So I've seen some in the 70s, but not at 100. So
okay, that's very interesting. So what I look at in here is, when we take a look at, so everybody has a website, that's kind of normal, and many stores reach their top scoring for that. But when I look at search, paid search, and social media, which are kind of more the e-commerce oriented, I see a lot of zeros, and I see a lot of small numbers here. So it makes me, as an owner of that store in that market, probably makes me want to think now, should I invest more in e-commerce for next year? I mean, considering my competition, there is a lot of things to be done. And when I investigate more on how do I focus more on paid search, maybe, or maybe I focus on social media, or maybe publish pricing. I don't know. Every market needs to be ready to publish prices, but this is probably something that I would need to take into consideration when planning my budget, because this seems to be like an opportunity. If everybody's at kind of like a lower to mid level in terms of scoring, probably also considering that my score is not the highest, there is a room to develop that. So part of my budget probably should be targeting the marketing communications. So I'm going to know e-commerce is unexplored. Is that all right?
Yep. As you were, we pointed out earlier that there are standard processes in your budgeting. We're focusing a little more here on the rates, competition, those kind of things. But exactly what you said, you have to consider your expenses, and looking at this, should you allot extra money for that marketing? I think with COVID, more people are, shopping online. So you want your website to represent the best. You want to be able to get that unit rented, and either get the people in the store or have them go ahead and rent a unit right online. So that would be part of reviewing your expenses, setting the budget for that. Along with technology is a huge thing at this point, that, do you have the right technology tools, again, to help you to move this forward? So.
Absolutely. I think this is why Scott is calling that gearing up, because if you base your budget on previous year, every single year, you kind of like may miss what's happening on the market, what's happening with competition, and especially what's happening with the customer. And the customer is changing all the time. Situations like COVID change the customer even faster. So some industries actually fast forward by 4 years in terms of their innovation, because that's what the customer is doing. For example, webinars like this. Yeah. So I think it's important to pay attention to those details as well. And for sure, I think when planning a budget, we would need to dedicate, even if you didn't have it before, somehow we have to dedicate some budget into making sure we increase that, because otherwise we will end up spending more money on advertisement, which may not necessarily work. And the beauty of the e-commerce is that it's totally measurable. So whatever you invest in it, you can very quickly identify your return from that investment, and then you can work optimizing that. It's just a pure benefit. Right. This is like my EKG, Jody. What is that?
Yeah, and this is probably my favorite slide. So I'm glad you're not having a heart attack. We had mentioned before, you talk about the customer and reviewing the year, you still want to know what the pricing has been like and what the trends have been like. That always helps you look into the future to see, where you've been, where you are, and where you want to go. So we actually can look back to a year here of trends, and you have different competitors on the graph here. And the black line is going to be your average rate in the market. And we're able to show you right now that that's at 25.19. This, I don't know if it's on a particular size or the market here. You do have the ability to take a look at unit by unit. And I think we can look at some of the dips here in COVID and see how that's changed. And then look at the graph to the right and see how often, more often, the prices seem to be changing at current times based on the market environment.
So my simple take on this is that, it was very flat until somewhere June, July, when it's like an earthquake. I think I'm going to put a note that the COVID started in February, but obviously it had repercussions until May. June, July, after COVID, seems to be that there's a lot of more price dynamics when you look at historical view. I mean, it's impressive that we can take a look at a 1 year of historical pricing. Trust me, in the hotel industry, you don't find tools that would give you so much of historical insight. But I'm going to take a note that since COVID, prices seems to be more dynamic, and I think it's great to notice. Obviously, if you hover over on the user interface, that bar, you will see the prices changing, so you can exactly see per day what was the price in the past. Probably you can identify seasonality here as well, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's
I know in the US we have a lot of seasonality. Summer, I'm in Florida, like you had mentioned, so there's a lot of moving in the summer when kids are out of school, if you're relocating, so you'll see the curve go up higher in the summer months. So like you said, it's a great in looking at pulling out those trends too. And then where there's a break in the graphs usually means that there was no price available. So that unit type could have filled up for that certain month or that certain time. And then when it goes back online, the inventory and the price is available.
Interesting. So that means if I focus in here for a little bit, if I can see the blue line, they have increased the price, and then they sold for that price. And then they realized that if they sold for a higher price, maybe we can actually even go for a higher price. But then they've dropped it. They kept it stable. Nothing was selling. So they've dropped the price. And then suddenly they got a pickup, right? Because they sold out. And then it was reopened again, no sales. So they dropped again, waited a moment, and then they sold out. So this is like really saying it's really proving that a price versus demand is really interactive, right? Normally on a daily basis, we don't see that. When we look at average pricing, we don't, even if you look at maximum or minimum prices, we don't really see that particular correlation between the price and the demand. And if the demand sees the right price on the right time, they actually click, make the transaction. And this blue line, whoever that is, seems to be nailing it. You can see the red line, for example, it kind of has a stable price. Yes, they did sell out for that price. Then they reopened. So they thought, oh, let's promote it because we reopened it. So we sold it out. And then I actually hope you can see my arrow. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because otherwise I would be talking nonsense. So here you can see that this is a very...
they may have had an opportunity to drive the price or the rate higher there when they sold out, but they kind of stayed very...
But they sold out very, very short term, and they remain to do that. So, and they seem to be the cheapest. So probably it's not even a price problem that they have, but something probably different. The green one, for example, was very stable, but they were always available. So they dropped the prices. They became the price leader, and still they have units available. It could be that they are selling more. They are just not reaching the top point of sold out. And that's a great way to analyze prices, because when you're planning the budget for next year, you have to identify these periods of time, and you have to identify when your price can go up or your price should go down in order to attract that demand. It doesn't mean to go for the lowest price, because you can see by the red one and then the green one, lowest price does not always work, right? Something else works, and that something else is the value for the right moment for the right customer. So no wonders this is your favorite favorite graph. I'm sure Scott sits on this graph for a long time. Let's see what else we can see. Okay, what do we have? Average unit type rates.
Yeah, so this is broken down into, like you said, the graph before I think was probably just done on all units. Here we've actually broken it down for you based on that square footage and showing you the comparison here of the average unit type rate. So this is going to be an average over, and I'm guessing if it was a year, I'm not sure what the length of this was set, but we're able to give you an average price based on square footage. And in this particular case, we're just using the market that was identified, comparing it to the national or that whole. So you can see where your square footage and your average rate lines up.
So the black one is my market. The green one is national market. Not far away from the national one, but it's always good to see where the market is against the overall picture and perspective. Probably worth looking at different types of markets to see when is it higher than the average, so that maybe you want to invest in that space. But also a good review of the prices. And this is like a bar chart. Okay, what can we see here?
Another pricing trend or pricing graph, like you said, a bar chart. The smaller units on the left, your store that was identified here is the orange, and in this particular graph, you're able to put one competitor on that market. So the green is your competitor, but the full bar graph gives you the range from highest to lowest. So like you see right there, what is that? That's probably the 35 square feet, shows you that unit type is selling from $15 to $32, or I just can't see.
Okay, well, yeah, the 35 is between 15 and 42.
Oh, euros, I'm sorry, too, not dollars.
Pounds, actually pounds.
Pounds, okay, thank you. So you can see there's a range, and you're able to see where you stack up as a competitor in that range. Are you the lowest? Are you the highest? Or are you right in the middle? And that should come from, is that your plan? Is that your goal? Do you want to be the middle? Do you want to be the top? It may be different by each unit type, depending on how many you have. So
look at that. If I was to analyze that, being completely, not involved in the market, again, the right-hand side seems to have the largest price flexibility. And price flexibility is very important because look at those bars, the black bar in here and the black bar in here. This is very tight, small units, small price, and a very tight price elasticity. Here you have a really large price elasticity, means that if the supply is not good enough, some owners can actually sell up much more aggressive their units depending on how they are available, or depending on what the seasonality for that product is. So if I was thinking about budget, I would say that, again, going for price flexibility, extending that price could be very contributing to my overall revenue. Because if you look at that, really, what it's kind of like double, from 40 to 100 pounds on my market. It's not even nationwide, it's on my market. The market range can double. So imagine for that sector, you can double your revenue if you apply the price whenever you can, and then whenever it's sensible to do so. So I'm going to note largest price flexibility is in the large unit sections. We can see here that the big war is a price war will be on the left-hand side. And here we have a lot of more comfort, a lot of room to actually explore with the prices.
Yes.
Agree?
Agreed.
Good. So that was reviewing price trends. Let's talk about price dynamics, volatility.
And volatility is something we use at StorTrack to gauge how often prices are changing in your market. So it could be up and it could be down. Some markets are going to be more aggressive than others. And as you can see here, we are able to track your store, which shows that your prices are changing very little at 0.2%. And the market average is 4.5%. And then we see multi-operators that are changing slightly over 7% of the time.
All right, so, this is what you basically showed me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my store price dynamics is like none.
If right, the price hasn't changed,
that would be not good. But so the market in general is 4.5 dynamics in the last 12 months, while I am 0.2. And we can see the division between single and multi-ops is that multi-ops are the ones that are dynamic. So all that black thing is triggered by multi-ops.
Changing their prices, yep.
Changing the prices. So that makes me wonder, thinking about the budget for next year is, should I continue to be price stable or should I continue to be more price dynamic? And if you remember, before we were saying that I have 75% availability. Mm-hmm. So versus the market, which was 45, I think. So you can see that maybe it is the price dynamics that actually help you sell out the products. Obviously, it's better to sell than not to sell. Even if you're in longer term contracts, better to have someone pay you monthly for it rather than keep it empty, right? So there is fixed cost, there is variable costs, and all that is important to plan the budget further. So you may make a quick calculation whether you want to keep the availability as this, but the price as this, or maybe you want to increase the availability but decrease the price, or do it the other way. And then you can have a simple calculation, a modeling for your budget to make the best educated guess and strategic guess where you want to plan. But my take on this will be that multi-ops grow price while I am not. So that kind of is a big takeaway for me. And knowing the UK market, I think it should be a great takeaway for everyone else, where we seem to be comfortable without changing the prices, thinking that our competition is also not changing the prices. But when you look at this, 4.5% price dynamics equals 45% occupancy versus 0.2 price dynamics and 75% availability on the market. I mean, that's very conclusive, I think. Gives a lot of room for opportunity. Right. This is market volatility by store and price option.
Yes. So here would be more listing your actual competitors and then seeing earlier we grouped them all into either small or medium operators. So here you can actually see what's going on in your market and which actual competitors or facility stores are changing the prices most often.
Right. So here I have taken a note that, you know, there's a pretty radical difference between some stores and the others. Like you see, this one has 0% dynamics, 0% dynamics. This one barely, but and I am barely dynamic. But some of the stores are like 6 times more dynamic. It's still a low percentage, but it's 6 times more than I am. So, and this one is 10 times more. So that gives you a more decent picture. And it could be when you're working on this, it could be that, you know, this competitor is not really my competitor. It's in my comp set, but it's not really one that I can compete with.
Direct competition, right?
Direct competitor, yes. Maybe I'm focusing on the smaller ones, but I need to also understand we're talking about a market within 3-mile radius, and the customer is out there looking around for your advertisements and for your banners, or searching the internet from his home location. and checking all these stores, checking all these prices, and then looking for these opportunities. So you got to be aware of that, and you got to strategically plan your budget, knowing that this is there. Whatever you plan is okay, obviously, but you need to be aware. You need to have that perspective.
But have a plan.
Exactly. I mean, we continue to do budgets year on year, so everybody will have a budget, but it's very important to have that understanding. You're widening horizons with that. Got my note. Let's move on. Oh yeah, this is related to marketing. I like that.
Yep, and price, along with price, is promotion. Like you said, I think almost everybody has promotion included, price and promotion. Very little do you not see some kind of a promotion for maybe the first time offer to get them in and get them to rent the unit.
Right. So I think my note is, I think we've mentioned that in the previous webinars, which, by the way, are available on our website. We've discussed about promotions. I think 90% storages use promotional text. We did some analysis on those promotions, but again, they are key for customer acquisition. So we need to understand which one is attractive and also which one is unique and the clearest to understand. So for example, we have here 50% off up to 8 weeks, which is this per week, versus first month free. I mean, I think that first month free is a very easy message. I understand what we're talking about, but 50% off for up to 8 weeks means it's 2 months, but it's up to. So there is some conditional probably rules around that. We got to be thinking about this. It's a marketing approach, but it's a very important one in how we express that message, because then we need to communicate it. We need to promote it and market it. And if we don't have the e-commerce behind it, these type of promotion can be lost in the way somehow. So now doing my budget, I know that I need to focus on probably a larger unit. I need to focus on my e-commerce, and I need to focus on the way I do my promotions well, so that all the three together form a firm triangle rather than be like three different lines.
And like you said, you want the message to be simple for the consumer to understand. And sometimes you may be limited to do that if you aren't, like you said, if your website doesn't have the tools to enable you to do a little more dynamic pricing, and instead of saying up to for 8 weeks, if you could pick those 4 units that you really want to be 50% off for 8 weeks, you could display that special per unit, but it would be linked probably to either your property management or your website and how those tools work together.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. So this is another view that we have that Scott suggests to use.
Yeah, it's just it gives you kind of, we've looked at separate slides here, and now this one kind of gives you a visual overall here. It actually has the storage unit, the square footage. It shows you the advertised online price. If you use a walk-in rate, I know that's bigger in the US, where you might have a different price if they walk in without any reference to the website, your promotion. And we're also able to track here for you the last time those price changes or promotion changes were made. And again, from a budgeting perspective or seasonality, you can pick up some of those key statistics or data from something like this.
That's a lot of insight about prices and promotions and when they are actually appearing, because probably competition doesn't sleep, and they also do their analysis and they know what they're doing, right?
Right.
Great picture. So in the summary, because I'm cautious of time, these were the 3 things that Scott has been adding into his budget, and he was sharing with us what he's looking at and what he's using StorTrack for. Now, I know we talked a lot about StorTrack today, but we've tried to also put some understanding and behind that StorTrack, because the more data you have, the more educated you get. And all you need to do is conclude from that data in the right way for your business. We may be looking at different types of businesses, different characters and styles, etc. But adding what Scott is suggesting, the proposed expansions of supply and competition, the revenue management, the prices, the dynamics of pricing. If we use that information, we can actually create those notes that I did. And these are summarized, all my notes from what I have learned from the slides you shared, Jody. And I think these are pretty important. E-commerce, crowded in the small store unit, got to invest for price promotions probably there, because otherwise the competition is too heavy. It's really a rat race. So I got to know how to do that smart in order not to spend all my resources into that section. There is a small supply and a big opportunity in the larger units. I can think about connecting two smaller units to make a one, because there's a lack of that on the market space. I need to think about clarity about promotions that I'm doing and make sure that e-commerce drive those promotions into my customers. I can see the market moving. I can see bigger ops are more dynamic than the smaller ops. I can see that after COVID, the price dynamics have increased. So this, we did it in 30 minutes, but there's a lot of understanding that I have about that market, and I don't really know the market. So I think it was great, Jody, for you to represent what Scott was looking at, but I kind of really understand what Scott meant by gearing up your budget.
Yep. He's a like you said, a StorTrack user. So in perspective, it was great to have his quotes and his insight on how he uses it. And like you said, there are a lot, it's still important that you know your competition. These tools could, certainly help you. But I think looking at the things that you pointed out is how, dynamic your market is. And it's very important for you to understand your market from your competitive standpoint, your pricing, and to help you build that budget. I mean, we all want to drive revenue. I think the number one goal is usually to either drive the revenue and increase the rates or increase your occupancy. And that's what we're trying to help you here, to show you, looking at your market is going to help you do that.
Exactly. And looking at the availability on the market, it's probably the balance between the two that is really a successful approach. Well, thank you very much, Jody, for that. I think it's been a very big learning. I hope it was a big learning for all the people who watched us or will be watching us. My key take is here to actually read what we have been trying to say and how we can read the data in order to conclude for our benefit, because that's the most important. You will have PMSs, which are very important to analyze. You have StorTrack that is important to analyze the external factor, and put that all together, you're becoming the master, and you're becoming ahead of your competition. And we exactly know what we should know in our business to stay competitive. So thanks very much, Jody. If you have any questions, please contact us at info@stortrack.co.uk or Kris@stortrack.com. Just go to our website, have a look at what we have there to offer. There's a lot of content there. Previous webinars are also there, so I invite you to have a quick look, and then we catch up on the next webinar, right, Jody?
Yeah, and thank you, Kris, for your revenue management perspective and expertise. That really, I think, helps people really understand the focus of those trends and the pricing, and how they can really make changes dynamically.
Super. My pleasure. Thanks very much, Jody. Thank you, everyone, for your attention. Have a good afternoon. I'll see you in the next webinar.
All right. Thank you, Kris. Thank you, everyone.